Welcome to DIY Volts. I'm Seth. Today I would like to introduce you to the Big Battery Ethos. This is a 48 volt lithium iron phosphate battery. It comes in modules, so you can stack these in order to increase the watt hours. You can also parallel these to really increase those watt hours. I want to talk about the battery module itself, the control module, the base, and all the other things that come with this unit. And then we're going to do an install. So let's go ahead and start looking at the Big Battery Ethos. What you see here is one complete battery module with the control box, the cables, the wire, and the base. This is what we would need to have to install one single module. So let's go ahead and start off first by taking a look at the battery, and then the control module, and then the other things that are required down here. This is a single module of the Ethos system. Starting on the top, you can see there are these little rubber stoppers, and that allows the next battery module to fit on top without sliding around, which is a very good thing. So on the front of the battery, it is just clear or blank, and it is nice and clean and stylish. There are handles on both sides, and because this battery weighs 120 pounds, those are very nice to have to pick up this battery. So let's look down here real quick at some of the specs on the battery. Lithium iron phosphate, 48 volts, 51.2 volts nominal voltage, 100 amp hour, 5,120 watt hours, and the charging range down here, 55.2 to 56 volts. And weighs 120 pounds. After the information, you have a orange and a black terminal, and these are actually the same point electrically as these down here. And so whenever you're wiring these up, it does not matter which of these terminals goes to the next battery. However, the top one here will go to the control module, and that'll make sense here in just a bit. There is a thumb screw down here that you can loosen up, and then you can pop this breaker cover out, and that will allow you to access this DC breaker down here. And from there, you can basically shut off the output of the battery. Get that popped back into place. Moving over here to this side, you've got the COM1, and that is going to go up to the control module. It just simply unscrews, and there is an Ethernet connectivity right there. Moving down, there is a state of charge indicator, as you can see by those dots, the on-off switch, and then down here is the ID bits. So the modules will have to have their own ID. For instance, if you just have one battery module, then it would be module number 1. But if you stack one on top, you can call that module number 2, and you'll have to change the ID bits in order to match that. Now on the bottom down here is where the next communication cable goes. Once again, it's just an Ethernet, and that goes down to the next battery module. I'm going to be installing 10K of battery storage here, which means we'll have 2 modules, and that will allow us to see all of the connections required to get those 2 together. The Big Battery Ethos control box rests on top of the other battery modules, and it's what's going to take the power from the battery, and it's going to have the output here on these terminals on this side. So let's go ahead and look at this unit. On the front, you can see the Ethos by Big Battery. There is a display which has 4 different buttons over here. We'll get to that here in a moment whenever it has power connected to it. Over here, once again, you've got a breaker with a thumb screw. You can push that down and open up this. Now you'll see it has a double breaker because that's going to shut off the power from all the battery units. So if you needed to get to the power quick, you could flip that off and it would be able to control the entire battery stack. Now you'll notice there are 2 different sets of terminals here. 2 of them are orange, 2 of them are black. They are the same point electrically. What's going to happen though is making the connection, you'll have a short cable from the top here to this one, and then a longer cable from this one to this one. And that's because this battery is capable of pulling a lot of amps at once, and you want to have lots of cable surface area, and that's what's going to be basically doubling up the cables from here to here and from here to here. And so you'll have plenty of room for that high amperage to travel. So keep that in mind, that these will be connected down here, and it makes a good connection there. Moving on to this side over here, once again, you'll notice there are two sets of terminals, and it's going to be the same thing. Because this battery can output a large amount of amperage, if you have an inverter big enough to be able to handle that, then both of these will go out to the inverter for positive and negative and provide you with plenty of cable surface area in order to carry that high amperage. Now down here are the communication ports. So if you look at this one right here, it says to the battery, and that's going to go down here. So each battery will be connected in series, and then that goes up here to the control module, so they can all talk to each other. And over here, this goes out to the inverter, so the inverter will then be able to talk to your stack of batteries. And so that's going to be important for communication there. The Big Battery Ethos module weighs right at 120 pounds, and you can stack up to 3 of them on top of each other, and that is going to be very heavy. So Big Battery includes a base, and you can see here it's got a flat bottom there, and then has those black rubber stoppers on the top, because the bottom of each battery module has little divots that will rest on there and prevent the battery from sliding around. And so whenever you install one of these batteries, you get the base, and you set this on the ground first, and then your first battery module goes on top of that. Now you'll see there are these little plastic pieces extending out past the base. Let me show you what the rest of the battery looks like once it's been covered with these as well. Each battery module has the cables or wires shown on the side of the battery, and so the system has these plastic covers which will help the system to look nice and also prevent people from being able to touch the wiring and other hardware here on the battery. So both the control module and the battery have these covers. Each battery module comes with an Ethernet cable, and it has the turn screw here on the end, but it is just an Ethernet which will plug up from one battery to the next to allow for communication. There's also a longer one of these that goes from the control module into the inverter. So all of the cables are included that are required for communication. Now, in order to make the connection between each battery or the battery and the control module, there are cables that are a specific length, and they fit perfectly from one battery to the next. And I'll show you that here in just a moment. But the connections for the terminals have a rubber gasket in there with a push button, and that allows you to click in, and it has a little bit of a swivel too for that connection, which is pretty cool. To make the connection between the control module and your inverter, a 5-foot cable is included. It has a bare end on one side, and it has that connection on the other, and there are 4 of these total in order to make that connection and have plenty of surface area. These are 1-aught cables, and they are plenty big enough with the 2 of them together to get the power from the battery to the inverter. Like I said, the battery modules weigh 120 pounds each. The control box, I'm not sure, probably around 30 or 40 pounds. So you're looking at well over 350 pounds of weight stacked up together. And this system includes a bracket for each of the batteries plus the control unit to attach to the wall, because you don't want that much weight to fall over and cause damage. So don't skip that step, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. I'm in my utility room where I'm going to be installing the Ethos battery, and I'm going to start off with the base. Now if you look at the base, the little rubber stoppers are offset. They're a little bit closer to this side over here and further away from this side. I want to have the back of the battery facing the wall, and that means the larger gap is going to go here against my plywood. So I'm going to simply set this base down here, and then the next step is going to be picking up the battery module and putting it on top of that. Like I said, these battery modules weigh 120 pounds, and so just be mindful of that when you pick them up. Alright, there we go. Got that in place. And the control module is going to be placed on top of this battery stack. This is what the 10 kilowatt hours of battery look like, all stacked up together. Now I'm going to have to scoot this out a bit so I can show you the connections for the Ethernet cable over here and also setting those ID bits. So let's move this out just a bit here so we can get to those, and then I'll scoot it back whenever it's time to actually lock this down to the wall. I have the side of the battery exposed here so we can look at it. The first thing I want to do is open up this little metal plate by unscrewing the 2 screws, and it will access the ID bit here. There's also a reset button, but we won't need that. So I'm going to take this plate off, which does have a water resistant rubber coating on the back. And you can see there are some dip switches. Now, if you go onto the Big Battery website, you can find a nice manual, the user manual. I've got it printed out here. And we want to look at the ID address description. And I've got the ID 1, means the switch the farthest to the right needs to be up. So I'm make sure all my switches are down, and the switch here on the far right, I'm going to click up. And that will designate this battery as number 1. So I can then go ahead and replace that cover to hide the ID bit, the ID address here. It's pretty simple. No need to be concerned about the difficulty of this step. I'm going to move down to the next battery module down here, and it looks like on my manual I'm going to move the next switch up. So instead of the far right, it's going to be the middle right, and that's going to go up to be ID bit 2. And I'm going to do that without you, but that will designate this battery as number 2 in the stack. Now that I have the modules set with their own ID bits, it's time to install the communication cable that connects one battery to the next. So I want to unscrew the COM port 1 of the bottom battery and the COM port 2 of the top battery. And then I simply take my cable in between the handle, and I want to make the connection here. So just snap that down into place and then tighten this down, move up to the next battery and get that connected up here. Once again, tighten that down, and those 2 battery modules will now talk to each other. Now you'll notice the bottom communication port is not being used. I will use that in a future video whenever I connect another stack of batteries to increase this whole stack from 10K to 20K of battery storage. Now to go from the top battery to the control module, I'm going to be removing this over here, which is battery to battery. Now my cable is a different color, but it should not make any difference. Be sure you go underneath this handle, because in the future, whenever you have to put those side plastic covers on, you want to make sure that your connections are not being hindered by that. Turning to the other side of the battery, you'll see there are both orange and black terminals. I want to remove the protective caps from all of these. Sometimes they're really on there good, and sometimes not as much. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, like I said before, these 2 are the same point electrically, and so are these. Now, whenever you get your cables, there's going to be a couple of them that are shorter than the others. So the longer one is what connects battery to battery, and the shorter one connects battery to the control module. So I'm going to set that one aside for now, and I'm going to connect the battery to battery. So go up under the handle and connect here, and it's going to make a little snap, or if you push the button in there, helps it go on a little easier. And then I'm going to go down here and connect it to the next battery module. All right, it's on there nice and good, nice and tight. Same thing with the black side over here. Makes that connection. There we go. Now this is a brand new module down here. I'm going to undo the thumb screw, pop this up, and then turn the breaker on. There we go. Now all of these battery modules are off from the button over here. Now with the shorter cable, I'm going to go from the battery module to the control module. There we go. And then the same with the red or orange cable here. There we go. So that connects the battery to the module. Now you notice up here there is a open one, and there's also an open one down at the bottom. We need that long cable to connect those two. The cable I have was designed to connect 3 battery modules, and so it's actually going to be a bit too long, but I'm still going to be using this one. So I'm going to feed this up through the handles all the way to the top. Alright, like I said, it's too long, but I'll still be able to get that plastic cover over there, I believe. So let's go ahead and put the red one on. All of my battery connections have now been made. They all come up here to the control box, and the breakers are all turned on, and it's now ready for us to power up the unit and see what's on the display over here. Now you'll notice I do not have any output over to the inverter, and that's because I don't have my inverter installed on the wall yet. So let's go ahead and turn the battery on and see what we get. So down here I'm going to press the power on button, and that should give us power here in a moment. Yep, Big Battery logo just popped up here, and now we can see what the display shows. Going to press the enter button. The Big Battery splash screen will pop up here, and we can see what information is displayed. It's on standby, 73% charge. It has basically one battery unit, 200 amp hours because we have 2 batteries together. Voltage is at 52.98, and it's got the protocols here are for the Lux Power or the EG4 inverter. So those are all looking good. Now we can do, so here we go, the Lux Power inverter is what I'm going to be using, which is good. I mentioned before that some brackets were included to mount this to the wall so the battery doesn't tip over. And you can see there is quite a good bit of track here and then a couple more holes over here. In the future, I'm going to be adding more batteries to a different stack and then doing a parallel. And so I have to have enough room between the wall and the battery to get those cables. So what I'm going to do is use these last 2 holes over here, and between the 2 batteries is where you'll have the connection point right in here. So what I'm going to do is bring the battery out far enough that I can mount this right here, and so I will need to also drill a couple of pilot holes into my plywood back here. Now I can tell already that my battery needs to come forward just a touch. Let's see if that's enough. Yeah, that right there should do it. And that'll give me plenty of room between the wall and the battery. So if I hold my bracket up to the wall, about right there, I need to drill holes here and here. A Phillips head screwdriver is used to put the screws into the side of the battery. I've got a long extension on my drill for the ones that go into the wall here. Now I don't have all the brackets installed yet, but I want to show you what it looks like to have the plastic cover over this section in order to make everything look pretty. So on the plastic piece there is a little cutout, and that's where the handle there of the battery is going to be located. So I simply want to match this up here. Okay, slide that into position. And then there is a set of 2 screws that are going to hold this in place. Simply slide those in. There we go. And that is what it's going to look like to cover up those cables. You'll have this on both sides for protection. And that concludes the basic overview and install of the Big Battery Ethos 48 volt lithium iron phosphate battery. These 2 batteries here with the control module make up 10 kilowatt hours of storage. Stay tuned for a future video where I double this and have 20 kilowatt hours of battery power. And so you'll get to see the parallel kit used for increasing this battery capacity. Now, this system can do up to 30K if you have the space for it. I don't with the limited spot for my inverter to go to. Speaking of the inverter, I will have a future video where I install this battery into a EG4 18K. So keep a watch out for that. Make sure you're subscribed so you'll get that notification. I'll have links to this battery in the description down below so you can pick up one for yourself. I have a code, I believe it's 10% off, so be sure to use that. I'm Seth with DIY Volts, and I will see you in the next video.